Hi everyone and Happy New Year from Mrs Abbas. This is another video to let you know about what we have going on in Year 6 this term. It's going to be very busy but lots of fun.
So, we're all writers and readers at Wren's Nest. I am going to start off by telling you all about what we are going to be doing in literacy this term. Before I start, let's complete the flashback 4 together. What information and learning can I recall from my previous lesson? Last term we focused on newspaper reports. Can you name some features of a report? So you may have thought of headline, byline, photo and caption, opening paragraph, main body and sources. Question 2. In your opening paragraph, what are the 5 W's that may be answered? Did you remember who, what, when, why and where? Question 3. What information and learning can I recall from my previous unit of work? Another unit we have looked at during Year 6 was story writing using the text Brasham's Tortoise. In the story we use synonyms to make our writing sound more interesting. Can you think of any synonyms for the word said? You may have thought of whispered, shouted, cried, yelled, screamed, giggled, muttered, murmured, plus there are lots more. Question 4. What information and learning can I recall from my previous term or year of work? In Year 5 you wrote a poem all about stationery in an empty classroom. Can you remember any of the techniques a poet may use? Did you remember they may use metaphors, similes, personification and onomatopoeias? We're going to look at these in more detail in a minute. This term we are going to have a focus of poetry. This is one of my favourite poems. It's called Sick. I can't go to school today, said little Peggy Ann Mackay. I have the measles and the mumps, a gash, a rash and purple bumps. My mouth is wet, my throat is dry, I'm going blind in my right eye. My tonsils are as big as rocks, I've counted 16 chicken pox. And there's one more, that's 17, and don't you think my face looks green? My leg is cut, my eyes are blue, it might be intermatic flu. I cough, I sneeze, I gasp, I choke. I'm sure my left foot is broke. My hip hurts when I move my chin. My belly button's caving in. My back is wretched, my ankle sprain. My appendix pains each time it rains. My nose is cold, my toes are numb. I have silver in my thumb. My neck is stiff, my voice is weak. I hardly whisper when I speak. My tongue is thinning up my mouth. I think my hair is falling out. My elbow's bent, my spine ain't straight. My temperature is 108. My brain is shrunk, I cannot hear. There's a hole inside my ear. I have hangnail and my heart is what? What's that you say? You say today is Saturday. Goodbye, I'm going out to play. So this is all about a child that didn't want to go to school and was making lots of excuses until they realised it was Saturday. This is another excellent poem. It's called Please Mrs. Butler by Alan Alberg. It's about a teacher that has lost her patience with the children in her class. Obviously we don't have any teachers like that at Wren's Nest. Please Mrs. Butler, this boy Derek Drew keeps copying my work, miss. What shall I do? Go and sit in the hall, dear, go and sit in the sink. Take your books on the roof, my lamb, do whatever you think. Please, Mrs. Butler, this boy Derek Drew keeps taking my rubber, miss. What shall I do? Keep it in your hand, dear. Hide it up your vest. Swallow it if you like, my love. Do whatever you think is best. Please, Mrs. Butler, this boy Derek Drew keeps calling me rude names, miss. What shall I do? Lock yourself in the cupboard, dear. Run away to sea. Do whatever you can, my flower, but don't ask me. Poetry is a form of literature and a very wide genre of writing. It is a form of imaginative writing that can be written by anybody. People choose to write poetry based on many different things. Expressing thoughts and feelings about something in a creative way is what poetry is all about. The aim of poetry is to involve and stimulate the thoughts of the reader. Poetry can connect the reader on an emotional level too. Poetry has many different forms and can be written in many different ways. They can be short or long, fun or sad, real or imaginative, structured or unstructured, rhyming or not. There is a lot of freedom when writing poetry, and because of this, the writer is able to express their thoughts and feelings in very unique ways. Let's look at some poetic features. You may use onomatopoeias. This is when the word imitates its natural sound. For example, bang, crash, pop, smash or drip. You may use alliteration. This is when the sound or letter at the beginning of each or most of words in the sentence is the same. For example, Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Poets also use similes. A simile is a figure of speech. It is when one thing is compared to another using the words like or as. Here are some examples: as busy as a bee, or as snug as a bug in a rug. They also use metaphors. A metaphor is a figure of speech which describes a place, object, or subject as something unlikely and uncommon. Here are some examples. Her eyes were glistening jewels. She is the sunshine which brightens up our day. In our next unit, we are going to focus on poetry and a poem about a rabbit. Here are the bare bones of the poem. The young rabbit asked Grandad Rabbit to tell them a story, the one he's told before about the struggle and the battle. The old rabbit agreed and drifted back in his mind to earlier times, to a place far from home where the ground had suddenly collapsed beneath him. But the young rabbits weren't listening. There was murmurs of "Poor old Grandad." Then they went away and left him on his own, trapped by his memories. In our literacy and language lessons, we then give extra information. So, the young rabbits asked Grandad Rabbit to tell them a story, the one he's told before about the struggle and the battle with the humans. The old rabbit said, "All right, children, settle down," and drifted back in his mind to when he was a bunny, to one springtime when he wandered into the woods. Suddenly, without warning, the ground had given way beneath him. However, his story was falling on deaf ears. There was tittering and murmurs of "Poor old Grandad." The young rabbits wanted a new story, so they left the old adventurer on his own, trapped by his memories. You can see I have highlighted extra details of time and place, and highlighted in blue additional information about the rabbits. I would like you to pause the video now and have a think about these two questions. How do you think the younger rabbits responded to the older rabbit? And why do you think the younger rabbits responded in this way? Let's have a look at what I thought. So I thought the younger rabbits started to make fun of Grandad. They don't listen to him, and they make him feel a little bit silly. The younger rabbits don't believe Grandad's stories. They think he's making them up. I know that you will really enjoy your poetry unit in literacy. I don't want to give too much more away, as I want you to enjoy your lessons with your teacher. You will use the poem about the rabbits and then edit it to make your own. I can't wait to read your poems. Please feel free to come and show me them when you've completed them. Have fun!
Hello everybody, Mr. Allport here. Now you've just heard from Mrs. Abbis about what we're doing in literacy in the spring term. I'm going to tell you about what we're going to be doing in numeracy. Well, we're now moving on to fractions, decimals and percentages. And first of all, we're going to look at equivalent fractions and simplifying them. We're then going to look at fractions on a number line, comparing them and ordering the fractions. Also, we're going to be converting mixed numbers into improper fractions and vice versa. We'll also be adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing fractions. And this is going to bring us on to fractions of amounts, and then moving on to converting fractions into decimals and percentages and working them back the other way. Then finally, we'll look at percentages of amounts, and that's going to be our spring term in maths. I think you'll agree it's going to be quite a busy term. Now, as I've mentioned so many times before in class, you'll really need to know those times tables to help you to understand fractions, decimals and percentages. So make sure you keep practicing, please. Okay, guys? Now, before we start having a look at the fraction work that we're going to be doing this term, let's have a quick flashback forward, just like we do when we're in our lessons. Okay guys, a question from our previous lessons. Now I know we've been doing the 4 number operations, but I seem to have got my rules mixed up for multiplying by a 2-digit number. Can you help me put these in the correct order? I thought that first of all I needed to multiply by the number in the tens column. Then I'd put the 0 below to put it in the ones column to hold its place. Then I seem to remember something about adding the 2 totals up to find the answer. And then finally, I thought I had to multiply the number in the ones column. But I've got to be honest, I'm scratching my head. Can you help me out? That's better. First of all, I put the 0 below to put it in the ones column to hold its place. Now I think this is good practice because all too often I see children forget to put that 0 in. So if we get into the habit of putting it first, then we don't forget it. After that, we need to multiply the number in the ones column. Then we multiply it by the number in the tens column, and we can only add the 2 totals up when we've done those 2 operations. Otherwise, we would have nothing to add up. Also in 4 number operations, we were looking at division. So when we're dividing a number, what do these words mean? I've got dividend, divisor, quotient and remainder. Can you remember what they all mean? Okay, first of all, our dividend is the total amount that we want to divide up. The divisor is the number, how many times we want to see that goes into the total amount. So in this case, 4. How many times will 4 go into 75? That gives us our quotient. What we would class as our answer, our main answer. 4 will go into 75 18 times. So our quotient is how many times the divisor will go into the dividend. And if there's anything left over, easy one to remember, that's the remainder. Okay, did you get that? If you remembered those, well done, I'm impressed. Our next question comes from our previous unit of work. And that question is, what is an integer? Now I know it looks like integer, but we pronounce it integer. And we came across this word a few times. Can you remember what it means? That's right. An integer is a whole number. And it can be a positive number, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, continuing on. Or it can be a negative number, such as -1, -2, -3, and so on. It can even be 0 all by itself, but it can't be a decimal or a fraction. And question 4 comes from our previous term of work. How would I round a number to the nearest 1000? Can you explain that for me, please? So, to round a number to the nearest 1000, we have to look at the hundreds digit. If the hundreds digit is 5 or more, we round it up. If it's less than 5, we round down. The hundreds digit in 4569 is 5, so we would round up to 5000.
To start off, looking at fractions, we're going to simplify fractions, and to be able to do this, we need to be able to find common factors. And to do this, we need to know our times tables really well. So the children will need to learn their times tables and know them off by heart. Along with simplifying fractions, closely related are equivalent fractions. This is where the children learn that whatever you do to the top number, the numerator, you must also do to the bottom number, the denominator. Again, you need to know your times tables. Moving on to comparing fractions. If the children have two or more fractions that have different denominators, they'll learn to find a common denominator for all the fractions so that it's easy to compare them to see which is the larger or the smaller. When comparing fractions, because the children have learned how to find a common denominator, this is a good time to learn ordering fractions. Because they know how to find a common denominator, they're able to put fractions in ascending or descending order when there's two or more. Again, very difficult Moving on again, the children will use their times table skills again to learn how to convert mixed numbers into improper fractions and vice versa. Improper fractions back to mixed numbers. When adding and subtracting fractions, the children will learn to add and subtract fractions with the same denominators and fractions with different denominators. So once we've learnt to add and subtract fractions, we move on to learning how to multiply and divide fractions. And then we're going to learn the little techniques for remembering the process for multiplying and dividing. Moving on to finding fractions of amounts. We first learn how to find one part and then more than one part of an amount. Again, timetables are really important because we need to know our tables, our multiplication and division facts. As you can see, fractions, decimals and percentages is a large topic area in maths. You can see from this diagram the mathematical steps that are involved in learning to convert them. Children will be drawing a lot on the knowledge that they have learnt in previous lessons.
Once the children have learned all about percentages, they will apply their knowledge to find a percentage of an amount. They will learn the common percentages like 1, 10, 25 and 50%, and then use this knowledge to find any other percentage of an amount. For example, 5% would be half of 10%, so that's easy to do. And to find 62%, they would first find 50%, 10%, and then 1%, using that twice. Then they would add them all up to find 62%. With the lead up to the children's statutory assessments in May, we will continue to embed what the children have learnt so far this year and revise other areas of the maths curriculum. I think you'll agree we've got a very busy term ahead of us, and the children have shown a real commitment to their learning so far this year, and I'm positive that this is going to continue.
Hello Year 6, it's Mrs Bastable, and I'm going to tell you what we'll be doing in geography and science in the spring term. We have a great geography topic this term, Amazonian Adventures, where we'll be looking at lots of geographical features of South America, the fourth largest continent and the fifth largest in population. We'll be looking at where it is in the world and special features that can be found in this part of the world. South America is home to some amazing places, such as the Amazon rainforest. We'll be learning about the layers of the rainforest and what it gives to the rest of the world and how important it is. There are also some deserts and mountains that will be really interesting to learn all about. As you know, in our lessons in class, we like to do our flashback fours to recap on our previous learning. Have a think about this question. Our last unit of work in the autumn term, we were looking at mythical Mediterraneans. Can you name 3 things that the ancient Greeks gave to us? Well done! The ancient Greeks left lots of stuff for us to learn from, but 3 key things that stood out to us as our golden nuggets were mathematics, the Olympic Games, and democracy. How about this one? What do you think we can learn today from looking at Greek artifacts such as vases, paintings, and even poems? Think about what we've learnt in class. Excellent. In our lessons, we looked a lot at looking at evidence from the past, and we learnt that this can help us to better understand what life was really like in those times, and also the beliefs that people had. Well done. Key areas of our food schema for this topic include farming and production, where we'll look at imports, exports, land use and environmental factors. This ties in really nicely with Wren's Nest's New Year resolution on climate change. We will study the importance of the rainforest and its impact on our planet. Children will get to study the structure of the rainforest, its different layers, and all about the plants and animals that live there. We'll also look at some indigenous tribes that live there and look at how they survive. Our focus for our fashion schema will be on clothing, particularly looking at specialist clothing and costumes. South America's largest country is Brazil, and one of the many things that it is famous for is the Rio Carnival. We'll be looking at the importance of this for the people of Brazil and to its economy, with millions of tourists visiting each year to watch the spectacular displays on show. Thinking about our technology schema, we'll be thinking more about transport, travel and changes over time. During this unit, we are able to study some of the mountainous regions of South America and look at how these huge mountain ranges were formed by movement in the Earth's tectonic plates. From this, we will identify the physical features of the area and how these affect the lives of people living there day to day. As geographers, it's really important that we will be using atlases and other geographical resources to discover important locations within South America. We'll also be investigating the significance of its position near to the equator. To further refine our geographical skills, we will be learning about longitude and latitude and looking more closely at the climatic zones and how many of these can be found on the same continent. As I said earlier, South America is a really great continent to study, especially when considering climatic zones. We will be able to further explore the complex natures of rainforests, deserts, polar and temperate zones, and develop our understanding of how all of these are found on the same continent. We'll be able to consider tourism and also discuss trade within the continent as well as exported trade and what they import. We will look closely at the continent's natural resources, including energy, food, minerals, and learn lots more about what is meant by the term fair trade. In our science lessons, we are moving on to the topic, Do you want to be in my class? This is all about classification of the species. Did you know that there are 8.7 million identified species living on Earth? This can include animals, plants and microorganisms. How many of these do you think you can name? When looking at classification, it is important to note the similarities and differences between the living things. Classification has been able to divide these animal groups into two main groups: animals with a backbone and animals without a backbone, vertebrates and invertebrates. Take a look at some of the images on this page of animals. Do you know any of their names? As scientists, our key focus is to try to find out why and how things work, and sometimes doing this through experimenting. Let's take a closer look at some of our wren's nest schemas that we will be focusing on during this topic. Of course, before we move on, we have to recall some of our previous learning. Think carefully now. What is meant by the scientific term adaptation? We looked at adaptation lots in our last unit of work, so I'm sure you all got this right. Of course, adaptation is the process of change over time, where a species becomes better suited to the environment that it lives in. Take a look at this question. Can you remember how Charles Darwin created his theory of evolution? Think carefully back to our learning. Well done. Of course, he created his theory of evolution after researching at the Galapagos Islands. He particularly noted changes in finches and giant tortoises. Did you remember that? Well done. During this unit of work, looking at our food schema, we will be thinking more closely about what we eat, looking at food groups, and about farming and animals. We will consider the importance of food chains and the different food groups, but also will look at how sustainable farming and monitoring of the different species on our planet is important to maintaining a healthy Earth. For our fashion schema, we are thinking more about trends, how land use changes over time and how society has also had to change. Considering how building has impacted on natural habitats, we will look at how this has affected food chains. We will also have to carefully consider what people are doing to help to protect more vulnerable species as a result of different land uses. For our technology schema, we will be thinking about famous scientists and changes over time to how their work is communicated. We will consider what makes somebody a pioneer and how does their work impact on other people. Why is it so important to our lives today? We will do this by studying some famous British scientists and having an opportunity to look at them through the ages. As our focus for this unit of work is classification, we will look more closely together at this in our lessons, considering how classification of a species actually works. We will identify the sets of rules, even though there may still be many similarities or differences. This can be hard to understand at first. For example, whales and humans are both classified as mammals. Have a think. What similarities do you think these animals have to each other? How are they different? Knowing they are the same classification, can you think of any of the rules that let us know that these are both mammals? It certainly makes for some fun lessons. As I discussed when we were looking at the schemas, during this unit we also have to do some work looking more closely at food chains and their importance on ecosystems. We will be able to make links between herbivores, omnivores and carnivores, but also we will be considering what would happen if part of the food chain was missing. What impact can a smaller link have on the whole environment? These come in really handy with our what if questions. What do you think would happen? Well, Year 6, we hope you're looking forward to the spring term as much as we are. Don't forget you can always get in touch with us, either through email or the WhatsApp or school mobile. Goodbye.